Any questions? Yeah. You can. Actually, you can get a free copy of the public version 2 of the code. When printed out, it's about this size. And it's available on the ICC website, iccsafe.org/IGCC. You know, and I brought one more prop. When I was studying for the ARA, I read this book about 100 times. It's Practical Specifier. It was written in 1983. And in reading through it, glancing through it today, in the work that we're doing in the Green Code, it occurs to me, this is the best architectural history book that I have on my shelf. And it really does give you a perspective on how things have changed. We've been through a tremendous evolution in the architectural profession in the last even 10 years, not to mention 20 or 30 years in the context of this book. But we want all of you to be part of that and continue to provide us with the important insight that we need to make the code the best it can be. But I'm not pontificating, right? Okay, it's question time in the back.
Yeah, I was wondering, the prescriptive part of it, it seems like I look at some of the stuff from last fall and they really focus on the mechanical systems. It seems like we should be looking at the total building performance, the bottom line energy performance of different building types like offices or hotels, rather than being so finite on these prescriptive items. I might decide, and the owner might decide, I want to super insulate my building, I want to do natural lighting. Well, I don't care about the mechanical system. But you don't have that option.
You know, it'll be interesting to see this latest slew of comments on public version 2, because there are two camps. One is that you should have trade-offs, and others that you shouldn't. And right now, that's still kind of up in the air. I think that, you know, I would fall in that camp. I agree with you. I think that it's, especially with high-performance buildings, and it depends on the climate, obviously, you can be very light on mechanical, depending on installation with the passive house standard, for example. If you follow that, there are parts of the prescriptive code that don't align with passive house standard. And you want a lower, you want a higher SHGC to get that free heat. And instead, if you look at the IECC 2012, 0.25 SHGC. Wow.
I mean, it might be too simple to say, but to me, it's like gas mileage ratings. You just need to get a certain performance.
And you know, the DOE agrees with you. Interestingly, the fight for outcome-based codes is happening right now, where, you know, run the marathon, wear whatever shoes you want. It doesn't matter how you dress or if you run funny, but if you get to the end point and you finish the marathon, then you're done. But that's not, I think there's a history of prescriptive codes that you have a whole, you know, generation of code development people that are tied to that. They don't want to give it up, especially on the mechanical side, because it's so easy to point to the checklist and say, okay, I met this requirement.
It just takes creativity out.
It takes creativity. It takes architects, frankly, working with engineers, not just a prescriptive approach. Anybody else? /IGCC. ICCsafe.org.
What do you see driving all these codes?
How do you believe it's getting ridiculous? How do you believe it's getting ridiculous?
What has really changed in the past 50 years that has made us so dumb?
There are a number of factors. I think especially with energy, yes. So back in 1975, in the early 70s with the first oil crisis, peak oil in the United States drove that. I still don't understand what happened in the 80s, but whatever. Now we have the same thing. We have the price of oil skyrocketing. It's also scarce, and no matter how much shale you've got in Canada, it's tougher to get to. It's not like it's just pumping out of the ground like it used to. So we're facing a source energy problem. I don't know, it's interesting. I can't answer very simply that question. It's a complex answer. There are a lot of political reasons, political things that are driving it. I think you know, jurisdictions are actually asking for a model code that has green provisions. What's driving the more and more stringent energy codes? That's also, there's a bottom-up and a top-down thing going on there too. The federal government saying, oh, energy crisis, okay, make codes impossible to meet. And then you have people designers who see waste and they see buildings as energy dogs and they want to get better because it's just better. You know, that's a bottom-up approach. I think there's more than a grassroots movement among the sustainability community to make buildings less damaging to the environment. And no matter what side of the political fence you're on, or the environmental fence, you know, you can call it global warming, you can call it energy independence, whatever it is. Energy is very expensive, and I think that the cost of energy, I think David's right, is driving a lot of the energy.
Why not make the guidelines rather than laws?
You know, when I look, yes, we do. And the standard of care is, as the codes become more stringent, standard of care gets raised. When you look at California, again, they're like a sandbox, they're a test bed. There are no Calgary compliant buildings on record before it became mandatory. And California, for, you know, they're about 2 to 5 years ahead, I don't know, energy. Like, whatever happens in California tends to sweep across the country. And they had, calling it an energy crisis is a huge understatement. So they had to do something to get buildings using less energy. They felt they had no choice but to make it a law. Now, other jurisdictions where you don't frankly have any buildings, it might not be much of an issue, but in very heavily populated, heavily constructed areas, if you improve the energy performance of buildings, you make a deep impact in the demand on energy. The blackouts several years ago, that's a big sign to all of us that something's going on. You know, and as in California, you know, so does the rest of the country. If you don't mandate it, no one's going to do it. There's no incentive. You can't incentivize the law, and I think that's the main reason why policymakers are driving so hard to make this into law rather than allowing everyone in their good graces